Hello and welcome back to a New Pace podcast. And welcome to episode 13, where we will be talking about identity and self expression. Thinking about this idea of how you introduce yourself, how you feel about yourself, and your true self. So, who am I? Who the duck am I anyway? This is something that I've asked myself so many times at different points in my life, probably constantly, and times when I've been a teenager, grappling with my identity, and times again when I've changed careers, times when I've been in my stepped into perimenopause phase in my 40s, although actually mid 40s now, that's probably been going on for a good 10 years in reality. But times when I'd be questioning who I am, and it's a human thing to question who you are, and I think it's a healthy thing to do, but then sometimes it can feel like a really challenging thing to do when you start to kind of feel like bad about it. And when you start to maybe do things that aren't aligned with who you are and aren't aligned with what you want in life and how you feel in life and what you're wanting to do in life and feeling that you should be doing things. So, one of the reasons why this topic came up for me today was that I am more and more so talking about integrating the self and doing that for myself to demonstrate that to people that I work with, people in my space, that having different facets and different parts of you is okay. So, the idea of integrating the artist side of me, the art therapist side of me, the art teacher side of me, and actually those things have in some ways always been merged and integrated, but in other ways been very separate. So when I was an art teacher for 11 years, and a lot of the key thing with that is about expression, it's about techniques, and very, very different from art therapy, because there's often there might be ideas explored in somebody's art, depending on the age of that student that I was working with, would be very different. For instance, the way that I would teach a class of year sevens would be really different to the way that I would teach a sixth form class. So the sixth formers might directly and intentionally have more personal ideas. The year sevens might have a project that is more led by me or led by the teacher, and their personality comes through in things like the choices that they make, their colours that they are choosing, and is very much about building those skills and that foundational stuff. So then when getting into kind of making art in a way that is more personal is something that I always loved as an art teacher. That's something that's probably the one thing that I miss about no longer being an art teacher, helping those older students and helping those students, whatever age really, to make something that is really personal to you, to them. And that's something that I bring back into my online space now, which I'm so excited about. So the art teaching part is very much about the techniques. And then when I chose to change to retrain and become an art therapist, at the core of that was a desire to help people and a desire to help people use art in a therapeutic way. I had got to the point in my teaching career where I cared more about the students ultimately than about what their well-being and them personally, how they felt, their mental health, than about what grade they got. And in some ways, there's a bit of burnout. Having taught for 11 years in that system is really challenging, and fair play to anyone that's like, I know people that have been teaching for years and years and years, and fair play to that, because it's an amazing thing to do. But ultimately, it was about wanting to be able to express myself differently and help other people to use art to help their mental health and to help themselves personally. So stepping out of that space and stepping into the world of therapy and the world of art therapy, and a space where it was very different, or it needed to be very different. I needed to act in a very different way and see things in a very different way. That is a journey that I am really reflecting on now, because I think that having been an art teacher has impacted on how I show up as an art therapist. So, an example of this is that one of the things that I talk about a lot, which is something that I really stand by here, is that when you're making art and when you're doing something as an artist, you're doing something in art therapy, in your art therapy session, or just generally, perfection isn't the aim. We're not aiming to make a perfect piece of art. We're not aiming to make like everything that you draw really, really hyper accurate and exactly perfect. But the aim is to be able to create something that expresses a part of you, expresses something that you want to express. And as a result of that, if it doesn't look as you want it to look, that can be challenging for some people. And it can be part of the therapy process is being able to work with that frustration and tolerate that frustration, have an increased tolerance of distress with that, just bit by bit. And sometimes it's about a material not working as they would hope, or maybe something maybe drawn in a way that they're not happy with. But what then I've found myself doing, especially in those early years, training, in that training period, and when I first started as an art therapist, I found myself being quite resistant to the technical side of art therapy, of art making. So when, or if there was a requirement for somebody to do something that might be quite technical, I would lean away from that, from helping them. And I found that I felt a lot of pressure to not help them with the techniques. And it feels a bit mean. It sounds mean. But actually, the reason for that was partly to help people to build that resilience and to build that tolerance of the frustration and to overcome that problem themselves in an independent way. And but also in a big way, which I reflect on now, that was about me making the distinction between my identity as an art teacher and my identity as an art therapist. And I had to do that while I was learning. It was essential that I did that while I was learning. And like at the same time, having that identity as an artist was sitting there, maybe not doing very much, maybe peeping up and going, hi, I'm here, this is me, really. Go and do your art therapy, go and do your art teaching, but hi, you're an artist, Leslie. And that's a bit of a really strange idea, because of course, if you depending on how you feel about artists, there's lots and lots of people might only call somebody an artist if they're doing art full time, if they're making a living off their art, they're selling, they're exhibiting, all of those things all the time consistently. But I would consider someone to be an artist if they make some art, and if they are kind of in that kind of way of being all the time. That's not that doesn't matter. It could be that you can dip in and out of it and always be an artist, whether you're making art or not. So the artist part of me needed to wake up and needed to be nurtured. And this is where, to an outsider, they might see lots of paintings on the wall and things like that. They might see me making art, and be, well, yeah, of course you're an artist. But because I was leaning into being a teacher, leaning into being an art therapist, I needed to learn to lean into being an artist. And what the reason why this is important and why I wanted to speak to you about this is that with the programs that I am delivering, the online programs, we've got a group program called Creative Flow that's coming up that you can sign up to now if you're ready, and individual one-to-one programs that's about creativity, build that combination of using art therapy and coaching together in a bit of a hybrid way. What that does is combines the technical elements of art and my capacity and experience in the techniques and guiding people to develop a project and to develop images that align with themselves. So what feels really exciting right now is like it feels like I've got to a point where things have really integrated, and integrating being an art teacher and an art therapist is something that I would have never imagined, because they are so different, and it's so important to distinguish between the two so that there's a transparency, so that if you are attending therapy, you know that you're attending therapy. You're there for a particular reason. If you're going to an art class, you know what that's for. And working with me with the integration of it all allows you to be able to say to me something like, you know what, Leslie, I want to work on my emotions today, and I just want to use art to process some emotions and to get my energy lined up, boost my mood maybe, or I'm feeling a little bit agitated and I want to use some art to calm myself down. Or it might be that somebody comes to me like in their session and says, you know what, I'm feeling really aligned and feeling really grounded. I've even just been for a walk or something. I'm ready, and I'm excited about making a project that feels personal for me. But I just want a little bit of guidance with this technique, or a little bit of way of combining how I can do something that is expressive, that expresses the emotions of my ideas and expresses some of the concepts I want to express, but I also want some technical stuff. Can you help me with that? And it's actually yes. And absolutely. And what I've got to say actually is that I apologize. Really? I apologize, because this capacity to do both is an innate sense of what's there for me in the experience that I have in the last few decades, like teaching and doing art therapy for the same amount of time really. But I apologize that I've separated them so much, and I've maybe held myself back in helping people because I've not wanted to make things unclear. I've not wanted to confuse the narrative as to what art therapy is. I've not wanted to do something that I am not, or step out of my lane sort of thing. And I call nonsense on that now. And yeah, I think it's about time you got the full version of me when you choose to work with me in whatever capacity, whether it's in a workshop or whether it's in some more direct work. So essentially that's how I feel like I need to build on this a little bit more and explain some of the things more. But ultimately we find ourselves following these kind of expectations of what a certain thing should be, and categorize ourselves based on something is that, or it is that. But what can be really important is including both. So more and more as my experience of art therapy has developed and improved, and my skills have improved, a lot of the knowledge and experience and kind of way, the nuances of working with people has become more entrenched and embodied. So sometimes just that subtle interaction, it's really hard to pull apart. It can be really hard to pull apart. How come you chose to help that person at that point? Or how come you encouraged and maybe observed, or certain comments that might be made in an art therapy session where I might be reflecting on something? There's a real nuance to it. And that would take a little bit more of an unpicking, and I can explain that more in a future podcast. But one of the things that I am starting to kind of talk more about is making these things explicit, really making it explicit, because I am actually doing a disservice to you if I don't help you with your techniques as well as helping you to express yourself. So it's so easy for me to say, well, it doesn't matter about what it looks like, because it's about self-expression. And then for people to go about having to tolerate maybe not having those techniques, or going and getting to know somebody else, but learning that somewhere else. But actually, I have those skills and I can help you with that too. So when we're grappling with identity and self-expression, we can often kind of be caught up in this sense of what we should be doing, and basing our identity on a job role, basing our identity on I don't know, just a different role, or if you're a parent, which I am not, if you're an auntie, or if you're a sister, if you're maybe, people might be, well, actually, what star sign are you? How might that affect your identity? When were you born? What's your human design? Mine's projector, by the way, and Libra. But those sort of things might not really be at the core. But then what's at the core can be something that keeps evolving. And then you can keep returning to, keeps evolving and growing, and you lose sight of, and then you keep returning to. So just to wrap up, I was at an event the other week. It was a summer equinox event, and it was wonderful. There were loads and loads of people holding space for the group. There was lots of interactive workshops, as well as embodied workshops like meditations and ceremonies and lots of things. And I remember at the end of one of the workshops that was very much about releasing things that no longer served us, we came together, and I remember distinctly shouting out and speaking out the words, I am. And we said this a few times, I am. And it was amazing, because how often do we, when we're in this state of self-expression, or who are you anyway, we say, I am Leslie and list all these different things. But what was refreshing about this was that just to be able to say, I am, unconditional of everything else. So thanks for listening. If there's anything that's come up for you, any questions that's come up for you from this episode, it will be really helpful to know about what's come up, because as I've talked today, I've been really mindful of lots and lots of things that I could talk further about that might need a bit more explaining. And if you let me know what sort of things come up for you, that'd be really helpful for recording future episodes. So thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.